Welcome to the show, Unbroken, Stories of Resilience with Sam Davis. Sam, I am right here. This is our very first show of this series. I've been an interventionist for over 14 years, and I love creating content and working in the field of behavioral health for so long. I have seen where just every single family out here needs some guidance and support. They need some truth. They need a way to decipher between all the background noise that's going on out here that you hear about misconceptions around addiction and recovery and interventions and treatment. So I'm here to educate and inspire hope, and so you can make a change in your life or your loved one's life and live a life of abundance like we do today. My guest today is Charmaine Crowley. I've known Charmaine for a long time, 8 years to be exact. I've seen her when she first sobered up, and she is now a powerful woman in recovery. And she hails from South Africa, so let's welcome Charmaine. Charmaine, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being the guinea pig on this first show
I'm
of
honored.
this series.
Yeah, I'm honored that I'm the first one and look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. What was it like? I mean, where are you from? How'd you get here?
So I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa. I'll try and make this short. When I graduated college, I moved to London. I was a teacher there for 2 years, met my ex-husband in London, got married, moved to Houston, Texas, moved to North Carolina, and then to Virginia 18 years ago.
Okay. Were you alcoholic at this point when you moved to the States?
I didn't think I was. Looking back, I probably have always been an alcoholic, but I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, no.
Was it pretty obvious to everyone else that you were an alcoholic, or did you keep it hidden pretty well?
So I don't think anyone had concerns until I was probably in my 30s. I honestly, during college, I never drank when I was under 18. 18 is the legal age in South Africa to drink. So I went off to college. I drank like college students did. I drank to excess. I binge drank, but it was normal. I surrounded myself with people that was normal. I could stop. I could put it down, and that made me think, well, I can't have a problem with drinking because when I'm pregnant, I put down alcohol for a year, and my fourth was born. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have a glass. And I'll go back to just having a glass or two and it giving the desired effect. And I drank a whole bottle, and I was like, wow. Like I realized then that something had changed. I don't know if biologically something was different, something in my brain. I couldn't make sense of it. And that's when I started drinking every day, and my drinking increased. I started hiding it. And I would say up until the last 3 years of my drinking, I hid it pretty well. I had a beautiful home, a successful husband, 4 amazing kids, was involved in school. I stayed home. I loved being a housewife. I loved being a mother. But I think I was very depressed. I felt very alone, and just kind of very stuck, just like a Groundhog Day. But in the last 3 years, people started noticing.
Was there a lot of shame around, after your fourth was born and you found that, once you took the plug out, you couldn't put the plug back in, that was there a lot of shame attached to it and trying to keep up appearances that, I'm the suburban mom and
Absolutely. There was huge shame. That was the hardest thing for me to overcome was my shame. And I remember online at night, once I'd into my second bottle of wine, I'd start looking up help. And I went to my first AA meeting and I could not make eye contact with anyone. I just kind of creeped in, sat in the back, hoped there was no one there that I knew. So there was a lot of shame.
And the want was there, I'm imagining, the want to not drink
Yes.
was there
Yes.
for a while?
For
How
a
long
while.
would you say that was there?
At least 3 years. After my fourth was born and I realized that my drinking wasn't normal, I desperately wanted to stop. And that's where I feel like I did start seeking help on my own before other people really started noticing. But for me, going to meetings wasn't enough. At that point, I needed more.
So your first trip to treatment, was that something that you did or something that the family put together? Or were you like, man, I got to get some help. Your pants are on fire and I got to get some help kind of thing?
It was something my family put together. My mom had come over to visit. My sister lived nearby. people that started being concerned, they thought I was just really depressed. I started isolating. But when my mom was there, she started seeing what other people weren't seeing because I was home alone, so I could hide it. So I'd say it was a family intervention, if you could call it that. And they said they'd found this wonderful treatment program close to home. And I was very willing because at that stage, I really wanted to get sober. I'd been going to AA for a couple of years. I felt like a failure because other people said, we walked into the rooms and we never picked up a drink again. I'm like, well, that wasn't me. So maybe treatment will help. I don't want to say I surrendered. I just knew that I needed to do something different.
But that wasn't your last
That
trip
was
to
not my
treatment.
last trip to treatment.
So what happened in that treatment? What do you think now, looking back? What was lacking? What was the misstep?
For me, and I always say I've been to numerous treatment programs, some really good, others not that great, but to me, it's where I was at. And the first time round, I didn't truly think I was an alcoholic. I thought I drank too much, but in my mind, I thought I would go away to treatment. I would be in this cocoon where I'd have no temptation to drink. And then I'd come back home and that obsession would be removed and I could go back to being a normal drinker. So in my mind, when I went there, this wasn't I'm done. This was like this is a reset, a reboot, and then I'm going to go back to. So there was no surrender.
Mm-hmm. It was tell me how to moderate. Teach
Tell
me how to
that's
moderate.
in my mind, and I remember them clearly saying, "You have the classic flight into wellness. A week or two, I'm physically feeling better, emotionally feeling better, spiritually feeling better, and I want to check myself out. I'm ready to go
Thank
back
y'all
home."
very much. I got it from here.
Exactly.
All the professionals are surrounding you and saying, hey, you may want to consider this, or have you considered that, or you may need this, or you may need that. And you're like, no, thank you. Got it from
Good.
here. I call that the little attorney inside of us because we all have one.
Yeah.
Like we're building a case as to why we really don't need to be here. This is a misunderstanding. I know better, and it's really someone else's fault. I don't know if that's where your head was, but
1000%. And I was such a control freak, and I even wanted to control my treatment that I drove myself to treatment. I remember driving through and they said, "Are you coming here to visit?" I said, "No, checking in." And they said, that doesn't happen often. And I did that because I wanted my car to be able to leave when I wanted to leave.
The control.
Yeah.
I did that the first time I went to treatment. I drove, and the treatment center which they said it was the top 5 treatment centers in the world, and it actually was far from that. They'll tell you anything to get in the door. Yeah. And it was about 5 hours from my house. So I'm like, no, I'm driving. I want to go. I'm driving. And I smoked crack the whole way there, until my crack ran out. It took me 24 hours to drive 5 hours. It's that control of, if this stuff goes south, then I get to get in my car and go home. Like, I am in control.
Exactly.
So what happened when you got home?
I got home, and within 2 or 3 months, I was drinking again.
2 or 3 months? You made it a couple of months before?
Couple of months. I went to meetings. I told everyone how great my life was going. I remember someone in a meeting saying it's the pink cloud phase that's going to wear off. And yet again, I was like, nope, I'm different. I'm going to be sober. And something in me then did believe that I could actually be sober. Part of me didn't want to go back to being a social drinker. There was a little fear, like, what if I can't? Because I'd heard enough in treatment that I knew more and I knew better than when I'd gone in to know that the likelihood of being a social drinker again wasn't great. Mm-hmm. But 2 or 3 months into it, I'm just going to have one.
Just one.
I mean, I deserve it. I'm going on a trip.
Right.
I just want to take the edge off, relax.
But who the hell wants to have just one anyway? What is that big lie that we tell ourselves that we just want to have one?
Well, I think the lie I was telling myself is that I would go back to when I was 18 years old and that one would give me a buzz and I'd feel great. And I had all the confidence in the world and I didn't feel anxious anymore, and I was always seeking that feeling again. But I could drink 4 bottles of wine and still not have that feeling. Mm-hmm. Never got longer than 6 months. 6 months was my longest, and then the wheels would fall off again.
And you said you were going to AA, which that's an uncomfortable experience the first time you walk into an AA meeting. I mean, you're not at the top of your game when you roll into the door of an AA meeting, and you're looking at people and you're comparing yourselves to people, and they're talking a language that I just didn't understand. I had no idea what they were talking about, and I really had no interest in joining their gang. So you were going to AA, or you were going to 12-step meetings.
Yeah.
Did you get a sponsor? Did you work the steps? Did you apply the principles? Was it any of that, or were you just hanging out in meetings?
I had a few sponsors. I was fired by a few sponsors. I would attempt the steps, but I wasn't really into all of that. I thought I could just sit in the room and absorb and be sober. I didn't really think I needed to do the work. I didn't want to do the work.
When the day came, what was different that day that had you seek help again that was different than the other days? Like, what happened? What did that look like?
I was exhausted. I was tired. I was the whole sick and tired of being sick and tired. I couldn't imagine life without alcohol, and I couldn't imagine continuing on the path I was with alcohol. The last time around, I'd say what was different is what my family did differently. I love what you always say to families is don't rob them of the gift of desperation. And I had never been desperate enough. I always had a soft cushion to land on. My family always welcomed me with open arms, hoping that this time I had it. But there was no accountability. I didn't follow through on intensive outpatient. I didn't go to see a counselor. I just didn't do anything. I thought that treatment would just cure me.
Well, let me back up just a second. The 4 kids.
Yeah.
Where were they in all of this from treatment center 1 to the day you sobered up?
So I'd never been removed from my kids. I was fortunate that I didn't have any legal consequences. I didn't have a DUI. My family were giving me a lot of chances. I like to think I was a really good mom throughout my drinking. If anything, I overcompensated. I wanted everything to be perfect and them to be well taken care of until I couldn't anymore, until I started dropping the balls. But I was with them. My husband then got an au pair because he was like, maybe...
Got a what?
An au pair, like a nanny.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because he thought maybe...
I thought you said old pair. I was waiting on it was old pair of socks, old pair of shoes. I didn't know.
No.
An old pair.
An au pair.
Okay. All right.
So-
I'm learning something here today too, y'all.
Because he thought that maybe I just had too much on my plate, and maybe 4 kids and being home, and if someone could just relieve a little bit of that, I'd be better.
So he added enablers to your...
Yes.
He hired an enabler.
Yeah. My mom.
That's awesome.
And yeah. So, and I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I said that had the opposite effect in that I had less responsibility. I just had to be home and be there.
Yeah.
Physically show up.
Yeah.
But the less responsibility I had, the more I drank.
Yeah. When I gave up custody of my kids, they thought that, well, this will motivate him to get well. But they allowed me to see my kids enough to where in my crazy mind, I still thought I was a good father.
Yeah. My eldest one was 13 when I got sober, when she begged me to go away and get help. And I remember looking in her eyes and she was like, Mom, go away for as long as you need to go. Honestly, don't come back unless you're going to be sober. And my youngest was 2, 3. I felt like his whole infancy was a blur. But speaking about treatments, I remember them coming to visit me and then leaving, and the tears and the heartache, and thinking I will never, ever, ever do this to them again. And I'd go back and I would do it again.
So that last day, that moment of glory that sucks so bad on the front end, it didn't even look like you going back to treatment, did it?
No.
What did it look like? Like paint that picture for all of us.
So I'll paint the picture. So my sister, who lived in the same neighborhood, but realized my husband's filed for separation. He's filing for 100% custody of the kids.
And they were done shelling money out.
And they were done. Yeah, they were done. So when I got the help, well, to back up, so my sister reached out to the psychologist at the first treatment program I went to and said, I don't know where to from here, but what do you suggest? And they said, call Sam Davis in Richmond. He's an hour away from where you guys are. I think he can help you. And my sister had an hour conversation with you. And yeah, my life changed after that hour conversation. I never had a formal intervention, but you gave my family hope. You gave them enough information to know that if they changed, I would have to change. And it was nothing, it was out of love. but just saying to me, we're no longer willing to do this. We will no longer enable you. They said I was no longer welcome back home until I had a year of sobriety, documented sobriety.
How'd you feel really when they laid that on you? Because, families are terrified that their loved ones are going to run out of the door, they're going to go kill themselves, or they're going to be so angry at their loved ones that they won't talk to them ever again. What did it feel like when they were laying that truth on you and the options were being removed? Like, what did it feel like?
I mean, I felt helpless. I'll still get emotional because I will never forget that day. That was when the surrender came, when I realized that things are going to change. Whether I changed or not, things were going to change. And my biggest fear was losing my kids. Like I knew they didn't ask for this. They deserved a mother. My delusional thinking thought, well, maybe their dad could remarry and they'd have a better mother. And that's what they deserved. I wasn't a good enough. That was my disease telling me, it's probably better that you're just not here anymore. So when my family left that day, I drank for 48 hours. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I was afraid, full of fear. The option they gave me when they left is they gave me your number and said, here's a guy in Richmond. When you're ready to accept help, call him, because we don't want to hear from you. The only time we want to hear from you, if you're calling us to say, I've called Sam and I'm on my way to Richmond. And they meant it. For the next 2 days, no one answered my calls. No one responded to my texts. And I'd never felt more alone. And that desperation, I remember on the third day, waking up, and I'd gone to sleep with a bag of wine at my feet.
Not the bag wine.
The bag.
That's high class, man.
I know.
That's,
yeah.
When you're in the bed with a bag of wine, a bag of wine.
Yeah. I used to remove the box to remove the evidence before I even got home.
Yeah.
And then the bag was easier to hide.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up thinking, praying, Lord, please let there be wine. And another part of me saying, please let there not be. Like, I didn't even know what I wanted to be there. And with my foot, I could feel it was empty. And I got up and I walked into the bathroom, and I'd heard that a million times, where you don't recognize the person looking back at you. It was just, I was dead. There was just no light in the eyes.
Spiritually bankrupt. It's like we will know loneliness as few do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they say. It sucks, all of my really profound spiritual experiences have really sucked on the front end. They suck, and families want to rob us of that, of that pain. Families, it's ingrained in us to prevent our loved ones from feeling pain, and they want to protect us from that. But that is precisely what we need, is that pain, that moment of, all right, I surrender and I'm willing to do whatever. So you came into sober living. To be honest with you, I didn't think you were going to last. I was just trying to keep you safe until we could figure out something to get you into a higher level of care that didn't look like another 30-day spend cycle. And you come into sober living, you're around a bunch of women you don't know, you're in accommodations that you're not used to, you're in a town that you don't know. What was helpful? Like, what kept you moving forward?
Just really simplified it. Someone had said to me, you've never put your recovery first. So I was like, I'm going to put my recovery first. I'm not home. I'm in a town where I have zero responsibilities. I went to 1, if not 2 meetings every day. I found a sponsor. I worked the steps. I tried to be of service. I was one of the few that had a car. And I was like, okay, what can I do to help someone? Well, I can give them a ride to a meeting. Mm-hmm. So I humbled myself, and it was humbling. It truly was humbling. I was just desperate. I was willing to do whatever you told me to do. And I did it, even when I doubted it would work for me. It was like nothing else that I've tried's worked. So I followed direction and became willing. And my family had followed direction, which was something different. Mm-hmm. So when I did start reaching out, or they did speak to me after a month, and I started the whole, this place is horrible, I want to come back home, I'm fine, I promise. They had got coaching from you that this is what she's going to do, and this is normal, she's uncomfortable, but the worst thing you can do is let her come home. So it was hard for them. And I realized they were doing the work, and they were not going to give me the option not to do the work.
What gave you relief? Like, do you remember the moment when you felt relief? When it's like, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I'm going to be okay.
I was in Richmond for 6 months in sober living, and that was the easy part because I was immersed in recovery, and I surrounded myself with sober people.
You didn't have the option to be watching TV one evening and say, nah, I'm not going to a meeting today. It's cold out. It's rainy. My favorite show's on. Like the girls went, you went.
Yeah. And I had a SoberLink device. So I had that layer of accountability.
And just for the people that don't know, a SoberLink device is a remote device that takes a photograph, facial recognition photograph of you when you blow. I'm not saying that they can't be beat, but it's going to take a good one to beat it.
Yeah.
And you get an alert on your phone, says time to blow. It's mobile. You carry it around about the size of a cell phone, and you blow into it 2 to 3 times a day, and it documents your sobriety.
And I had to have a year of documented sobriety. And initially I hated that. But honestly, eventually that gave me the freedom to come and go, because I knew if I was gone all day, even when I was back home, no one was concerned, because they knew by the end of the day when they got that email, I couldn't trick, I couldn't fool. But when you say, when did I have that freedom? That took a long time. I remember thinking, am I ever going to wake up and not think about drinking? When I was done with the SoberLink and I jumped through all the legal hoops where I knew I wasn't going to lose my kids, that gave me hope. And when I started focusing on that and them and not on myself, I started thinking of it less and less. And it just, there came a day where I was like, I've been through the whole day. I've been to the grocery store, I've been all over, and I haven't once thought about wine or picking it up or drinking. So I don't know when, just as I don't know when I crossed that imaginary line into alcoholic drinking or being an alcoholic. I don't know when I crossed that, but there was a moment where it's like, the obsession's gone.
And I know a lot of people's journey is different, and really what it comes down to is I've got to rebuild this internal compass, the way that I live my life. I've got to rebuild it.
Mm-hmm.
You utilize the 12 steps, the 12-step fellowship to do that. So you've worked all 12 steps.
Yes.
What was the step you disliked the most, and what was your favorite step? I think everyone has a step they like, and then there's a step that they really can't grab hold to or feel like they fully don't understand. And then there's a step that, that's my step. That's my step. Which, do you have one of those?
I mean, I've been asked this question before. I'll say step 4 was the one that I dug my heels in. And it was the first step that you actually had to do work. The first 1, 2, 3, I'd done that enough times. And I believed in a higher power. I never had an issue with God or surrendering my will. So that was easy for me. Once I had realized that my life had become unmanageable, the God part was easy. But having to sit down, and I wanted to do it perfectly. I remember pulling out all the books on how many columns you must have, Googling what is the right way to do it, writing it, tearing it up because it didn't look good, it didn't look nice. And then eventually my sponsor was like, we're doing this on Sunday. So, tear it up one more time and redo it, whatever you got to do. But we're doing it on Sunday.
Deadline, accountability.
Yeah. And then did it. And that 5th step, I was like, why did I? It was just something that I dreaded doing. And once I did it, I'm like, it's all out.
Mm-hmm. You're coming up on 8 years sober, free from alcohol. And what's life been like? And what's it look like?
A lot of things happened. I'd say getting sober, I got divorced and sober at the same time. It was one day at a time. I never liked that saying, but in the beginning it was one day at a time. Like if I do the next right thing, I get up, I do, I open that bill, I pick up the phone, I pay it, I go to a meeting, just the little things, little insignificant things, but they were big things. And then at 2 years, when I did things like I did substitute teaching. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I used to be a teacher. So I thought, well, that would be something to, fill my days, give me a sense of purpose, something that I had to get up to do.
And the family's back at this point. Your
Family's
kids are back in your
yeah.
lives. the sisters, the mom, everybody's back.
Yes. Yeah.
They're starting to trust you? Or are
That took a long
or are they
time.
kind of looking in your face when you come back from school, from
That
substitute teaching? I mean, what did that look like?
that that took a long time. And I feel like my kids, the older three, were the ones that it was the hardest to regain that trust. I mean, I remember it was a year and a half. It felt like forever to me at the time, where they would still pick up my coffee cup, sniff my Yeti border thing. They just were waiting for that shoe to drop. And that made me sad. But I also realized it was years and years and years. I wanted it to be just like a magic fairy wand, and you all trust me, you'll believe me, and we can just start afresh. But that took work, and that was hard. I have great days, months, years, and then I have ones that I really struggle. Do I want to drink? No, that's just been taken off the table. That's not even something I play with the idea of. And I have two. I mean, my kids are incredible. My relationship I have with them is better than it ever was. I truly didn't think I'd ever have that relationship healed. And when I look back now, I'm so grateful that I got sober when I did, because I would have lost those relationships. Two are off in college now. One is a senior in high school. One's about to go to high school. And those that were going off to college, I think they were about ready just to wash their hands and saying, well, we're kind of done.
How's the relationship co-parenting?
We live less than a mile apart. Kids spend a week with me, a week with him. We do Thanksgivings, Christmases, birthdays together with his new wife and kids and my new husband. And we're friends, which who would have thought?
That's miraculous.
That is miraculous.
That absolutely is.
That I truly didn't. I didn't believe that he would ever let go of the anger and the resentment. But I made amends.
How was making amends to him? How was that?
That was a hard amends. And I prayed about have the time be right, because I was afraid, and one day I went over and I wasn't even planning to do an amends. I was going to pick something up that the kids had forgotten, and he was home, which was unusual. He works different shifts, but it was in the middle of the day, and he said, why don't you come in and sit down? And we haven't really spoken. You've been sober now for a year. You seem to be doing great. Why don't we just sit down? And I remember I sobbed. I cried. I asked for forgiveness for things I had said, for things I had done. And eventually I remember him reaching over the table and taking my hands and saying, I've forgiven you. You need to forgive yourself. So awesome. That was a hard one.
That's awesome. Yeah. So now you're an interventionist, and I got to tell, you did a few interventions with me. You went off, you got trained.
Yep.
Right? You took some intervention training.
Yes.
And you were sitting second chair with me, which second chair means like you're assisting in the intervention. You're not the lead interventionist.
Yeah.
What did you think of your first intervention? When you sat down, I mean, was it what you expected?
No, my anxiety was through the roof. I was very thankful that you were leading it and I wasn't, because we walked in there and you said a prayer and you said, this is not, God's going to do his work and the room will be filled with, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to believe what he's saying. Because, and I just remember sitting back, listening, watching, holding space for, and being shocked at how it unfolded. No drama, no yelling. I think there were tears, but good tears. And just realizing, wow, this is so different. I mean, even being on that side of it as an outsider looking in at this family, and then realizing if I had fear going into the situation for the first time, the fear that the families have, and it's nothing like, every intervention is different, but it's not what people think it's going to be like. Mm-hmm. Like someone said to me, it's the most loving thing you can do for your family.
I think that interventionists, because see, I look at this war on addiction. That's what we're in.
Yeah.
War of addiction.
Yeah.
We're not the war on drugs. That's a different war.
Yeah.
And that's for the ATF. That's for the SWAT teams. That's DEA. That's all them.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the war of addiction. And you, Miss Charmaine, are one badass interventionist, because I have seen you work. And I truly believe that we as interventionists are the special forces of the war on addiction. I really, truly believe that.
You get to be a part of probably the important, if not one of the most important events in that individual's life.
Absolutely. They'll never forget that situation. And I may forget some names. I may forget, an intervention or a past intervention. The memory of it may elude me until someone reaches out or they say, hey, do you remember? Absolutely. I can go right back to it. But that's a day they'll never, ever, ever forget. And that people like you and I, people like me that burn his life to the ground on cocaine and pills and crack cocaine, and people like you that were just drinking your life away, that looked in the mirror and didn't even recognize yourself, that we get to be a part of that, blows me away. Blows me away.
I think you can go for any training, and some are more helpful and useful than others, but actually doing it and working alongside someone. I mean, I'll often catch myself saying something and I'm like, that's Sam Davis. That wasn't but it's become part of what I believe. But I was a part of so many interventions with you that I feel like it equipped me to have the confidence to branch out a little. So my heart was always that I want to do interventions
in the trenches. Front lines.
Yeah.
Work in the front lines.
And then, as God has it, I met another interventionist at a conference, someone that I admired, like I'd admired you and had followed. And very unlike me, I went up and introduced myself because I walked straight by and then thought, you've always wanted to meet this person. Turn around and go introduce yourself. And we had a conversation. We had a couple of conversations after that. And a year later, I joined Recovery Care Partner. I'm still eager to learn. And I know that I still have a lot to learn. So being part of a team just helps with that.
And you're with a great organization.
Yeah.
You have an excellent track record, great reputation. They've been doing it a long time. There's some shady out here, isn't it?
There's a lot of shady.
There is.
There's a lot of shady. And
I don't know when I go to a conference sometimes if I've fallen into the car dealer salesman of the year conference or and I know my producer has his own car business. I mean this with all the love in the world. I think he knows what I'm speaking of, right, around this, or if I'm at an addictions conference. I'm like, sometimes it just seems feels seedy, doesn't it? You know what I'm saying? It just, like, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that.
Yep.
And that's why I do a lot of this, because I want to work with the families. Like, I don't like to rub shoulders and be at these conferences. And there's a lot of people in the industry that I like and that I admire and that I'm fond of and that I hold in high regard and who are my mentors and that I lean on. But my circle's small.
Which is good. And I think what I've learned with the team that I'm with now, Don Sloan, Roger Hoff, I'm not going to mention all the names because then someone will be upset that I didn't mention theirs. But they're trusted. Our values are aligned. I feel like I do less and less conferences because I just, like you said, that connection with, I just don't feel it at a lot of those places. I think the way you're reaching families is way more effective.
Direct to consumer.
Yep.
Direct to the problem of just knowing that people are watching content, video content. They're trying to be present. But in the back of their mind is this nagging, never-ending, just dull angst, knowing that their loved one's out there suffering, And like I do these cooking videos called Recipes in Recovery, and it's also on my YouTube channel. I mix some of that in because I want people to know how to make some homemade buttermilk biscuits, and I like to drop a message on them in the middle of that recipe they don't even know they were looking for. And they'll be like, damn, my husband drinks like that. Yeah. Damn, that sounds like my son, and they're thinking they're making biscuits, and they're good biscuits too. Like some of my biscuit recipes are good, but they're getting a message, and I just I just want this world to be a little bit better place for myself and, more importantly, my children to walk around in.
Yeah.
So I'm honored to be in the trenches with you, Charmaine. And I just want to thank you for being a part of this today and being my first interviewee. Sam, I am. Always remember to be good to yourselves. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.